Hello, this is Ruslan Belov with you. Do you remember how recently in Ukraine there was a full-scale advertising campaign to recruit 18-year-olds into the armed forces under contract? And some people fell for it. But only a little time has passed, and the first corpses have started appearing. The first 18-year-old KIAs. Yesterday, the first reports of this surfaced online. An 18-year-old guy signed a contract, his girlfriend was happily seeing him off. Everything seemed wonderful, all good. But sometime later, she's already crying in a video. Because he came home, or rather, he didn't come home. He came back as a KIA in a coffin. That's how bad it's gotten, and it's only going to get worse from here. The war continues, and we continue to monitor the situation on the front lines. Let's open the map. So friends, do you remember I told you yesterday in the episode that we could expect good news from the Kursk region? Well, the good news has arrived, specifically from Guayevo. Yesterday, we spoke in detail about the movement in this area, and we mentioned that the current fighting was taking place along Zavodskaya and Kirovo streets. And now, literally within a day, our forces managed to liberate the rest of Guayevo, even though a large part of it still remained under enemy control. By the evening, the village was back home. As you can see on the map, American cartographers have also acknowledged this. They marked Guayevo in red, meaning full and undeniable control by the Russian army over the village. I want to congratulate the residents of the Kursk region on this achievement, because Guayevo was the toughest settlement to liberate among the ones that were still under enemy control. Nevertheless, the army accomplished the task. The Ukrainian forces couldn't withstand the pressure. Yesterday they experienced panic and chaos, and in the end they simply fled, just like they did from Sudja, just like from Kazachya Lokhnya, and now they fled from here too. So while only the northern part of the village was under our control yesterday, by the evening the rest of it had been liberated. Now, what remains under Ukrainian control in the Kursk region? Just two villages. One is Oleshna, which is encircled on three sides. The Ukrainian soldiers there are in full panic and complete disarray. I posted a video of one of the Ukrainian fighters in Oleshna. He recorded two messages from there. He says they've been abandoned, they're being forced to hold their positions, there's no support, no ammunition. Anyway, follow the link in the description to my Telegram channel. Watch for yourself what kind of situation they're in and what mood they're in. So I personally have no doubt that Oleshna will also be liberated in the near future. The second village still under Ukrainian control is the border village of Gornal. And I'll say right away, this one won't be easy. First, it's a border village, which means, like it or not, the Ukrainian garrison will receive some form of resupply from Sumy Oblast. Second, the terrain itself is very difficult. As you can see, it's all elevated terrain, and currently it's under Ukrainian control. For example, the Gornal Monastery, here it is, it's also located on a key elevation. But still, there's definitely reason to be optimistic, because every day Ukraine loses more ground in our territories. At the moment, they control only 28 square kilometers, and Russian forces continue the hard and grueling work of liberating our land from the Ukrainian armed forces. As I said before, I really hope that by May 9th, the 80th anniversary of Victory Day, all our territories in the old regions will be fully liberated, both Kursk and Belgorod regions. By the way, in Belgorod, the Ukrainian forces no longer have control over any villages. Demidovka and Popovka have been completely liberated. Even American cartographers now recognize that. And yesterday, the Ukrainian forces again tried to launch a counterattack in an attempt to regain lost positions. And as a result, they lost a valuable and extremely expensive Abrams tank. I posted the video of the Abrams being destroyed on my Telegram channel. You can go check it out. Just so you understand, if you convert the cost to rubles, an Abrams tank is worth over 700 million rubles. That's about $7 million. And to lose such an expensive tank in a battle over just a couple of tree lines in Belgorod region, well, that's the kind of wasteful loss only the Ukrainian forces could manage. Right now, they're only holding on to those two tree lines, and even that's slipping. All right, let's move on. There's a lot of news today from various front lines, and most of it is good. For example, in the Lyman direction, which continues to deliver good news day after day. Yesterday, for instance, the army took control of a new village, Katarinivka. It's a small village, but capturing it is strategically important because it opens the way for clearing out this entire pocket. Just so you understand, this territory here is in Luhansk region, and clearing this pocket effectively closes that chapter, at least for this section of Luhansk. Another important point, capturing Katarinivka makes it possible to advance toward Redkodub and encircle from three sides the larger village of Novoe. Taking both Novo and Redkodub is necessary for reaching the Netrius River and securing a solid foothold for the next major push toward Lyman. And such a push is definitely part of the summer campaign plans. We've already discussed this in a separate video. Also yesterday, there was confirmed progress on the Siversk front, for the first time in a long while. Here, as you can see, in this area, the advance reached nearly 2 kilometers, which hasn't happened here in more than a year. Those of you who regularly follow the frontline reports know just how hard it is to make even a few hundred meters of progress in the Siversk direction. And here, we're talking over 1.5 kilometers. Ukrainian military analysts even started to panic yesterday because this advance means that Siversk is now just 5 kilometers away, close enough to be targeted by FPV drones, which indeed started happening as early as yesterday. That's what triggered the panic among Ukrainian analysts, so we'll see how things go in the summer campaign. But when you put together the strong momentum on the Lyman front and the new success near Siversk, it's entirely possible we'll see both Lyman and Siversk fall. And of course, we can't overlook the successes near Dnipropetrovsk region either. The Ukrainian front here is cracking and on the verge of collapse. Yesterday, our forces made significant progress toward the eastern outskirts of Kotlyarivka. This means the village is now blockaded from both the south and the east. We haven't been able to secure the village itself just yet, but it's only a matter of time. The current frontline configuration speaks for itself. The Ukrainian armed forces will not be able to hold this village, nor will they be able to stop a breakthrough into Dnipropetrovsk region. That breakthrough is coming. That's a fact. The second sector where the Ukrainian defense is also breaking down is further south. They've basically lost Troitske. American cartographers still show the western outskirts of the village under Ukrainian control, but I was informed yesterday that there's no one there anymore. So Troitske is now under Russian control, which means there's now just one village separating this area from Dnipropetrovsk region. That village is Orakov. I think the initial goal here will be to straighten out the front line between Kotlyarivka and this sector, clear the area, and only then begin the assault on Orakov. So timing-wise, that won't happen this week. It'll likely be next week. As for Bohatyr, yesterday there was an attempt to push out from Rozliv and reach the outskirts of the village. Whether or not they succeeded, I haven't seen any confirmed info yet, so we're waiting for clarification on that. But overall, to sum up, you can clearly see that the Ukrainian armed forces no longer have the initiative on any part of the front. They used to have it in the Pokrovsk direction, where they launched attacks and even achieved some limited success. But all of those gains have now been rolled back. All lost positions have been retaken, and with Ukraine's lack of reserves, weak spots are starting to show all over the front, from Zaporizhzhia all the way to Kharkiv region. Heading into the summer campaign, I'm more than confident that the pace will only increase. That's a certainty. Now let's say a few words about politics. Donald Trump has called on Europe to pay the United States for the past. We imposed high tariffs on Europe. Now they're coming to the negotiating table. They want to talk, but there will be no talk until they pay us a lot of money annually. Not just for the present, but for the past as well, said the American leader. Meanwhile, tariffs on Chinese goods may reach as high as 104%, according to the White House. Asian markets that opened on Monday suffered a record collapse. As Bloomberg reports, following Trump's tariffs and China's retaliatory measures, the index dropped by 7.1%, the worst performance since the 2008 global crisis. Taiwan's high-tech stock index plummeted even further, by 9.8%, marking the steepest fall in its entire history. Poland has halted trading on the Warsaw Stock Exchange. At the same time, reports are pouring in about the suspension of exports from the Eurozone to the US. Even Audi has now announced it's halting shipments. Because of this, a significant crash in the American financial market is expected today. By the way, the European Union will introduce its first retaliatory tariffs against the US on April 15th, and more on May 15th if no progress is made in negotiations, said EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. As a negotiating stance, the EU plans to propose zero mutual tariffs on industrial goods. We remain ready to negotiate with the US. We have proposed zero tariffs on industrial goods, something we've already achieved with many of our trading partners, because Europe is always ready for a good deal. This offer remains on the table, said von der Leyen. So now, Europe is facing two paths. One leads to Russia, the other to Trump. Talks of a deal have already begun. Shares of the German defense giant Rheinmetall plummeted by 27% after the US tariffs were announced. Against the backdrop of these US trade duties, Rheinmetall stock dropped by 27% on the Frankfurt exchange, a massive blow. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen was quick to declare that the EU is ready to negotiate mutual zero tariffs on industrial goods. With the US earlier, President Trump imposed tariffs on countries that have similar restrictions in place against American products. And that move struck hardest at America's own allies. As a result, shares of Germany's biggest defense firm, Rheinmetall, lost 27% of their value. Other companies in the military-industrial sector didn't fare much better. Hensoldt dropped over 10% in early trading, while Renk lost nearly 9%. All this despite the fact that Europe has announced plans for a massive rearmament campaign worth billions of euros. But according to experts, Europe won't be able to sustain large-scale militarization without access to cheap energy resources. That's why it all comes down to two options for Europe. One road leads to Russia for energy, the other to President Trump, in hopes of lifting the tariffs that increasingly resemble sanctions. And it seems the EU has already made its choice. We remain ready to negotiate with the US. We have proposed zero tariffs on industrial goods, something we've already achieved with many of our trading partners, because Europe is always ready for a good deal. This offer remains on the table, von der Leyen reiterated. In other words, the talks are already underway. That's all from me for now. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and stay connected with us.